Hello, dear friends.
Hello there, welcome back, everybody.
As always, guys, make sure you subscribe to all three channels, Heart's Home, also, of course, EEARTS, and also on Evolutionary. We are on Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble as well. When you go on any one of the videos, if you hit the little drop down, you will have all of the links. And, again, there is some crossover when it comes to the stuff that we're talking about, but kind of our purpose, I think, in splitting them up this way is to, cover everything that's happening on the globe, but with a little spiritual insight that might seem unusual or strange or even crazy, depending on what you've been brought up with, and that's on Evolutionary. And we'll go a little deeper into things on EEARTS. And then for those that want a fresh start spiritually, you can head over to Heart's Home. And that's how we're trying to split it up, of those things like this video. I think this video could go on all three. And I'm not really sure. I'm going to confer with the lovely lady to my right and see what she suggests after we do this video. Because, there's a lot of things that don't make sense in our world until we really look at things from all different angles, not just the angle that we grew up with. Again, we could see in this world right now, if you grew up in Russia, or maybe China, certainly maybe Iran, Pakistan, we could go into so many different countries, you would have a totally different view of the world situation than if you grew up in the US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Until we put ourselves in other people's shoes, how do we really know what they're feeling, thinking? How do we really know what lens they're looking at this world situation from?
Mm-hmm. So much of that starts, growing up, right? When we're born, our parents, our teachers, those who we trust, those who we love, those that we are told to, respect and listen to and learn from. So naturally, everything that we're taught, we hold so near and dear to us, but we're entering a time now where the evolution of the spirit, soul, mind, it's so inevitable, and people are feeling it. They just don't know what to do with it. They look in this world and they say, wow, this isn't working right. What is wrong with this picture? And it really, one of the best things you can do if you're going through that is actually look at your very own belief system and what you were brought up with, and kind of start to dissect that and see, are you believing it because you believe it, or are you believing in it out of loyalty? So loyalty to others or loyalty to self.
And so this is the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is one of my bedtime readings I'm going through now. It's something I've covered before, but just trying to look, again, as we grow, we could always get more insight down the line to things that we looked at and just missed little points, or all of a sudden things hit us and we're saying, wow, you know what? This is just like that over here that I read about 4 years ago. And that reminds me of this over here, which is saying basically the same thing again, just from a different point of view. And so, I encourage people to step out of the comfort zone and look a little deeper. So I bring this up because this is just, it's touching on, again, the life of Krishna. Krishna, many people have equated with Christ, and the whole idea of Christ and Christ consciousness, Krishna consciousness, Christ consciousness. Krishna, it is thought, was here in person, perhaps. I think from what I've seen most people saying, scholars, as an acceptable date, maybe 5,000 years ago, thereabouts. It's taken traditionally that he left around 3102, 3104 BC. And that's when the Kali Yuga started, is when he left. And certainly, the energy of Krishna with the energy of Yeshua, who, Jesus, most of the world knows as Jesus or Jesus Christ, Christ meaning the anointed one, and certainly Yeshua was anointed in the manner of which the intention is there, meaning that he is somebody that really has a clue that he and Source, God, are one. The anointing is the anointing as many others have discovered. It's all about that self-realization, or what we would call self-realization, which comes about only when we remove the blockages from our chakras and initiate the Kundalini flow and really get that pineal gland working. And so, again, the similarities, there's similarities in all traditions. This is what we've seen. There is a major distinction in the difference of the Sanatana Dharma, which we're going to cover, and what we have in traditional Christian or traditional Judaism and certainly Islam. There's one distinctive major difference. And in fact, we're even kind of warned against it in Revelation. The Council of Nicaea, again, the Roman Empire was persecuting the early Christians, and early Christianity just kept growing. If you can't beat them, join them, but let's make a version that we can utilize to our benefit. As the early Christians were totally divided on what they really thought the message of Yeshua was. Well, if you read the Beatitudes, how can you argue about the beauty in the Beatitudes? The Beatitudes are just, they could bring a tear to the eye.
And that's what so much of this is about. It's like them throwing in these wonderful, beautiful golden nuggets. And we're not saying to dismiss that at all. Definitely, when you see these beautiful things, hold on to that. Put that in your heart. But understand there's a bigger agenda. There is more stuff going on. So these are things absolutely our dear Yeshua would confirm and verify, and definitely want this information spread far and wide.
And let's just touch on them. So, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. And blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I don't think you're going to get a lot of disagreements there. This is exactly the type of thing that you will find over and over in other traditions. And, it's kind of that eternal wisdom. It's something that speaks to our souls and our hearts. And at the same time, you can look at some of these things and you can see how, if you look at the Sanatana Dharma, the heart and core of Hindu, as well as Buddhist, Jain, and Sikh traditions, you could see they would be in agreement. So would Taoism. So would so many other traditions. And you could look at some of these things and say, well, just the law of cause and effect right there is going to basically take care of so many of these things. Because again, it's all about our frequency. It's all about where our heart is and our intentions are. And that is so key in understanding this. So again, you had groups like the Gnostics that were of a very different mindset than what came out of the Council of Nicaea and the other councils, which gave us the official dogmatic version of Christianity that we know across the globe today. Again, the Sanatana Dharma is all about the eternal wisdom. What is the core truth, basically? When we look to the Council of Nicaea and the other councils that came after, Constantinople, Ephesus, and Chalcedon, you see they were debating things like the eternal deity of Christ. And you had, areas saying Christ is a created being, another one saying Christ is God. The outcome, the eternal deity of Christ affirmed, becomes part of the Nicene Creed. When we look to the, if I'm going to just move forward, I'll just say it as the Hindu point of view, the Vedic point of view. Well, every being has source, the real creator, God, in them. That's just a given. So yes, it would be in Jesus, Yeshua, but it's also in you, it's also in I, it's in every single being. Our pets, the birds, the fish, the trees, everything. And so these things which they were debating and arguing over, well, again, if you look to the core truth, and some of the sayings that he is said to have said, again, we don't really know for sure, because we weren't there. So you see this whole quote here, and this is from John 8:48 through 59. The Jews answered him, "Are we not right in saying that you are a Samaritan, and you have a demon?" Jesus answered, "I do not have a demon, but I honor my Father, and you dishonor me. Yet I do not seek my own glory, for there is one who seeks it, and he is the judge. Truly, truly, I say unto you, if anybody keeps my word, he will never see death." The Jews said to him, "Now we know that you have a demon. Abraham died, as did the prophets. Yet you say, if anybody keeps my word, then he will never taste death. How are you greater than our father Abraham, who died, and the prophets who died? Who do you make yourself out to be?" Jesus answered, "If I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. If it is my Father who glorifies me, of whom you said he is our God. But you have not known him. I know him. If I were to say that I do not know him, I would be a liar like you. But I do know him, and I keep his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced that he would see my day. He saw it, and was glad." So the Jews said to him, "You're not yet 50 years old, and have you seen Abraham?" Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am." So they picked up stones to throw at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. And so, do you want to comment first? No? Okay. So, the obvious thing here is the reference to the true self. This is what we would call the Atman. This is the soul that never dies. And so somebody made the comment there that there's nothing in the Bible that tells us the dead can see us. Yes, there is. It's right here. Hello. Yes, it's right there, but you just haven't read into it. You haven't seen it for what it is. What we do here is viewed on what we might term the other side. Again, we talked about the journey that we're on. We're either manifested in the 3D in a physical body, or in the 4D, as you would say, a spirit, a ghost, etc., etc. It's all a matter of perception. And just as Cindy can see dead people all the time, every day, just like Whoopi Goldberg and Ghost, and I've gotten glimpses from time to time where I've clearly seen them more now than probably ever, as our perceptions are changing. It's going to be natural for us to see them, know they're there, and encounter them. This is what happens when we're outside the Kali Yuga. But yes, absolutely, those that are not in the flesh, there's still a connection there, and they can see us. If I but think about my mother or my father, they will know I'm thinking about them, even though they are over on that 4D side. And so it's the same thing here. They can watch what's going on. They know what's going on. We are always being watched, and we are never alone. We're never, ever, ever alone.
Mm-mm. No, I mean, there's really even no such thing as really dead, There's different states of existence. There's different forms of matter. But everything is intertwined. Everything is intertangled. And when I look through the eyes of other beings that are on other densities, I can see what they see. So, yes, I mean, we all have the ability to see. If you want to call them dead, call them dead. We can see the dead. They have the ability to see us. There are some who have, we would call them deceased. They are stuck. They're in a place. And no, they don't experience time. They do not experience seeing other things. Sometimes they might even be stuck in a place where there's just no existing. They're just sitting there. They're just trauma, and they might not know what's going on. And sometimes when there needs to be a lot of healing or there's a lot of trauma, that's exactly where they stay. So there's different states of being, and being dead is just not one.
Yeah, it's really, I think the clearest thing is just saying disembodied in the physical body sense, but we still have a body, but it's an energy body. And so, again, this is where you can see they want the masses not to understand the bigger picture. So they give us this version, which is kind of distorted. It leaves a lot of questions. And then ultimately you're given at some point by your teachers, well, I guess it's a mystery God. We just have to have faith, my son, my daughter. No, you could actually know, and you can understand by looking into other traditions and by developing your own practice of meditation. So this one over here, my Father who has given them to me is greater than all. No one can snatch them out of my Father's hand. I and the Father are one. And then the Jews picked up stones to stone him. Yeah, and that's self-realization. The Creator's in me. That's something that, if you made that statement as somebody that's living in the Indus Valley area and growing up with the Sanatana Dharma, it would have been okay, we get it. I mean, obviously you know it. But again, they don't want us understanding that. But at the same time, they got to kind of put the truth out there. It's out there for us to decipher, or just simply, listen to whatever Billy Graham says, Chuck Swindoll, Jimmy Swaggart, anybody that's out there, Charles Stanley, anybody that's out there. If you don't, if you're like most people that just don't delve deep, you don't have that itch, you're just going to go with what's given. You're going to listen to the Pope. Oh boy. Self-realization is, in fact, the only religion, for it's the true purpose of religion, no matter how people define their beliefs. That's Paramahamsa Yogananda. It's understanding the true nature of the self. This is from Rumi. I searched for God and found only myself. I searched for myself and found only God. Meditate on that.
Mm-hmm. Spirituality, it's not about things that are external. It's all about going within and learning about who we are. And it's a path that we are all blessed to have. It's a path that we all get to realize and take this information into ourselves. There is so much to discover about yourself. You're not just the 3D body. You are not just this really dense form of plasma. There's so many different layers to you, not to mention all the other lives you have lived. It's a never-ending journey. It's very, very beautiful when you discover spirituality. It's not a scary thing, and no, you're not talking to demons.
When we look at the transfiguration, and when you see Jesus, Yeshua, in his glorified body, what we're talking about is a light body. It's a light body. That's what they're giving us. And who is he talking to? Who was that? Is that Enoch? Is that Elijah? Or does it really Sandalphon and Metatron? Or who is that? Is that Moses? Is it Abraham? These are light beings we can't quite make out. But, again, when you go back farther and Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, because again, this is far more ancient. Krishna all of a sudden appears transfigured into Vishnu, and you see all these incarnations, too many incarnations to count, too many beings to count. And Arjuna gets down and says, you are the Lord, you are the God, you are, And, Krishna basically says, well, the difference between you and me is I know my past incarnations. He doesn't, he again is saying, I've been on this path a little bit longer than you, my friend, but I'm trying to let you understand the true nature of your being. And it is that we are one consciousness. We're ultimately one consciousness playing all these different roles in this grand drama. And this drama doesn't exist just on this planet. In Buddhist tradition, Buddha was incarnated in a different planet, a totally different place, not on Earth at all. He heard the suffering of the people of Earth and then went and dropped his physical body there and came here to incarnate to help humanity here because he was needed here. That's exactly, what an ascended master would do. They choose to come in and to help us. They choose. They've already been there, done that. But they want to help those that are struggling.
And it is really curious through astrology. You can see someone who is an ascended master who has decided to come back here to give freely of themselves. And every time I run into one of these, they're very unique individuals, and they're really deep and they really get the spiritual side of things. So it's just a interesting, unique thing to come by.
And this is again where they won't be able to make sense out of this if you take the traditional Christian viewpoint that, well, talk about God and what properties does God exhibit? Omniscient, all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful, omnipresent, present everywhere at the same time. Well, everywhere, doesn't that include you? Doesn't that include your dog? Doesn't it include that bird in the tree? Doesn't it include the tree? Of course it does. This is it by its very definition. See, this is where everything is right in our faces the whole time. The term Atman is used to basically denote an individual self, source self, we can say. The soul within. And Brahman, with an N, is the eternal being, that which is eternal. And the Atman is Brahman, is one of the realizations. The self cannot be grasped with the senses, but which grasps with the senses. And again, souls that are in the body may be ignorant of their nature. And that is what self-realization is. It's realizing, well, if the body was gone tomorrow, I still am. That's a huge realization, but that's what Jesus is saying in those statements. I and the Father are one, of course. And so it's a cycle of transmigration of the soul. The Deva kingdom is expansive, and it includes tiny little, what we would call beings like sprites and gnomes and all these other little forms of intelligent life that are just simply tending to maybe one lone flower. That's its purpose at first. But that same little Devic being at some point in time will end up probably taking an incarnation as an animal, and then maybe later on down the line might take an incarnation as a human. And then later on down the line might take an incarnation or go to a state of being of something that we might term a god or a deva, in the sense of a very, very advanced spiritual being. New souls are always being birthed from source.
Mm-hmm. You have to look at things with the understanding that consciousness is everywhere, and it's experiencing everything just like you are. You can't look at a blade of grass or a flower or a tree and think it has less consciousness than you. You look at it and understand that it sees, it feels, it breathes, it experiences. It's all from source, and we all came here to have a journey together. So everything that you see around you in Mother Nature, it's here for you. You are here for it. It's something, once we understand that we are all one, but we chose to come down here to split ourselves and have an individual experience, then I think that's when people start treating other entities a bit differently.
Then we look at the entire world in a new way. So again, Atman is Brahman. The individual soul is ultimately, it's the all. And the all resides in all of us. When we see a lot of the symbolism of the Bible, like we were talking about the 7 lampstands, again, they're relating to the 7 chakras. When you see all those halos around the saints and the golden light, gold's a high vibrational frequency. And this light, this aura, that's what it is, and you'll get people that are afraid of chakras. Oh, isn't yoga demonic? Again, if anybody's saying yoga is demonic, yoga ultimately means union with the divine. It's a method for you to understand your union with Source. The only beings that wouldn't want you understanding that are what we would call demonic. So when people are of that mindset, then truly they're being led into darkness. It is actually the darkness. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thy eye be single, the whole body shall be full of light. A direct, obvious reference to the pineal gland functioning. So again, Sanatana Dharma is a term that refers to the eternal truth that you find in Hinduism. And again, in Hinduism, it is just every bit as expansive as Christianity, and probably even more so, because there's so many different. Go ahead and whichever way feels good to you. There's ultimately there is dogma in different groups, in different sects, but there's also this non-dogmatic approach that whichever way you choose is fine, because it's the understanding that we're all different. So if you relate more to Krishna or Vishnu, maybe you would find that you're more of a Vaishnavite. If you feel more resonance with just the divine feminine energy, then maybe you're more of a Shaktiite. Maybe Shiva is the thing. Maybe you have more of that ascetic mentality and want to kind of just get away from the whole world and just spend eternity meditating. Maybe you have more of a tendency towards that, then that would be a Shaivism, and there's countless others. And again, it's not that you would ever get judged upon whichever path you choose. So Sanatana denotes that which is without beginning or end. In other words, everlasting. Dharma, there is no direct translation into English, but it comes from dri or drihi, meaning to hold together or sustain. It's often interpreted as natural law. So again, the eternal natural law, the eternal natural way. And, there's ways, and we're going to go deeper into it. I just wanted to point out Tao and Taoism. It literally means the path or the way. So you will find that these two things are not in opposition to each other. No, they're actually very, very sympathetic, and they resonate with each other. And again, it's one of those things that it's all about finding what path feels the most comfortable to you. And our brother Zach has done a book, and I'll get the link and show it. And Zach has, as we've been interacting with him, and he's on his own spiritual path, his book has changed, and he's revised it again, and given a newest version as his consciousness is ever expanding and ever changing. Same thing with all of us. We're always learning new things, growing. That's why when we're dogmatic, dogmatism means stuck in the mud. It really means we basically are shutting ourselves off from new growth. And, what served us yesterday might not serve us tomorrow. So again, we need to be able to be flexible and to adapt and allow our soul its growth.
I think one thing that we do that's very, very natural, and usually that's due to the upbringing with religions, is you find some kind of a schedule where you have to do things a certain way to get a certain result. So if you're looking around at spirituality, there's all of these different things that you can do, and it's almost like, if you're brand new to it, you want to find something that you can give your time to, that you know is a shoo-in, that if you do X, Y, and Z, this is going to happen. You want something to stand by and have something to follow, because it is more comfortable if you are doing something that someone else has said. Maybe you feel this person has more wisdom, or maybe they have better teachings. So there is a very safe way of being by looking for all these different things and then wanting to give of yourself in that specific way. And that's perfectly normal. But what I have done, and Mike and Zach, we've gone through all of these things. And me specifically, I'll just speak mostly for myself. It took me a long time to allow myself to release from looking at all of these different religions and understandings and realize, hey, what's wrong with the way I want to do it? Why do I have to do it the way they do it? And it took me a little while, but I'm there, and everyone is different, and it's a sacred journey. It's your journey. And I think that's something that can get lost, on during the path, is that this is your journey. You're that unique being. You are that special facet of the diamond that the light is reflecting in only your special way.
So, followers of Dharma spirituality believe in one all-pervasive, all-loving Supreme Being. Now, so that's the key. Ultimately, the source of all is love and is loving. It's not vindictive. It's not vengeful. It's not jealous. How could it be jealous? It just goes against any sort of insight into what we discover from going within about the very nature of Source. It is completely loving. So when you see those references to, I am a jealous, vengeful God, that's not Source. That's not the creator of this universe either. As Source is actually beyond the individual creator of this universe. But the creator of this universe is very much in line with Source.
For those who have children or pets, or beings that you truly love, you love them all individually and differently. And there's no jealousy about the way you love within your family members. It just is. You just love everyone a little different.
Yes. And, in discussions with the Galactic Federation, too, I asked them, I said, so what tradition do you think is closest to the truth? And, the answer was that there's nobody that has it perfect, because, again, embodiment makes it so we can't have it perfect. So even what we take from this dharmic tradition is still not exactly perfectly, right there. It doesn't have, and we'll never have every little nuance figured out. But it's the closest to how the beings on 5D and above view reality. And so, though worshipped in different ways and by different names in a variety of ways, there's ultimately only one source, one what you could call true God. And God is absolutely not Hindu, Christian, Jewish, or Muslim. It's way beyond any sort of dogma, because the Creator is beyond planet Earth. Planet Earth is just a tiny little speck, in creation. So, and what you find is interaction with different extraterrestrial beings and stuff. They all understand this. They understand this very, very well. And, this is something that is accepted, as we've shared. How can you talk to extraterrestrials? How would you understand our language? Because it's telepathic. There really is no language barrier when you're talking to beings from other worlds.
No, not at all. It's probably the easiest thing that you could ever experience when you engage in back and forth dialogue, call it what you will. There's no speaking. There's information that goes back and forth, and it's instantly understood. So that's probably the best way to have conversations with your guides, is you just let the information flow back and forth. I think the problem in lies where we go to interpret that information and we are stuck with information and vocabulary words that we've learned growing up, and that's so limiting when we go to try to explain something, articulate something, and we're only have what we learned, and that's it. But they are so vast, and when you're having experiences with these beings, it can take quite some time to take the energy and then translate it and get it out, because there's so much information to unpack. You could have one flash of information could be 1,000 words, and really you got to take your time to unpack that and take a look at it. But yeah, it's probably the easiest, fastest way to communicate ever, is just through that knowing, that understanding of one another.
And it's an exchange of frequencies and vibrations is what it is. So the principle that God is both transcendent and immanent in all things. God is omnipresent in all things. There's nowhere where God is not present. God is further away than the furthest star and closer to you than your own soul. God has unlimited divine names and positive attributes, all of which share fully in God's transcendent nature. So the transcendent and the immanent, that is the Shiva and the Shakti. The Shakti is the material. It is the manifest. It's that which is, where the Shakti is, the more concrete. It's the mother. It's the birth. It's the creation. And then when you look to the Shiva, it's the thought. It's the consciousness that gives rise to the entire concept of what can be.
In astrology, Vedic astrology, it said that all the planets are male. There's one line of thinking this. All the planets are male, and everything that planet expresses is the female. So they both need each other to create.
And every living being is a spiritual being in our deepest, most essence. We're pure consciousness, ultimately. And so Source gives birth to us, per se. And in reality, it's as if Source is allowing a small part of it to drift off and to go have this amazing experience as all sorts of different beings all over its creation, with the ultimate goal that it will grow, learn, experience, love and everything else that comes with it, and then want to come back home and come back to reintegrate in. It's a big spiral. It looks like a circle, but it is actually a spiral. And so it is transmigration of the soul through many different forms of existence that gives us these experiences. And then karma, reincarnation, that's all part of the laws of the universe. And again, it's very much in agreement with much of Taoist philosophy. Moksha is freeing the soul from the earthly pain and suffering. Now again, you will see multiple different systems, like if we're looking at Buddhist philosophy. Some of them view it with a slightly different tinge, a slightly different shade, point of view. In Buddhism, the ultimate goal is really just focusing on the liberation and the reintegration. When Source, in my point of view, I think I'm more aligned with the traditional Hindu way of looking at it as, hey, I'm just a piece of Source that's out having a temporary experience. So it's to be, I should say, I guess you could say it's to be enjoyed, really, yeah. And recognizing, too, that the state that we find ourselves in now is an impermanent state, because ultimately we are eternal beings. So, this is just a temporary ride. So, again, even though it will be at times challenging, perhaps even unpleasant, it's all part of just learning, growing, and experiencing. So, not that we necessarily have to go right back to reintegration. And, people do look at this in different ways. Like the Jains, for instance, want to just, their goal is to live in the highest heavens, per se, where the devas are, where beings like Lakshmi is, and just share time and space with them. And, I would say that, that sounds good to me too. So again, you have reincarnation, transmigration, karma, affects us too. What we do and what we put out, it's all about our frequency, all about our frequency. We imagine that the Supreme Being is very, very far away, many, many millions of years, light years away, yet it's very near in our throat itself. It's all about choice. It's fascinating too. So this is somebody's little, I guess I would say this is their work of love to a friend of theirs. And he's just bringing up the fact that, didn't you ever notice that Abraham and his wife Sarah, right, of the monotheistic Judeo-Christian and Muslim religions, are nearly identical to the name of Brahma and his wife Saraswati of the Hindu religion? Regarding the link between Abraham and Brahma, Stephen Rosen writes, the similarities between the names of Abraham and Brahma have not gone unnoticed. Abraham is said to be the father of the Jews, and Brahma, as the first created being from Vishnu, the first being that arises when Vishnu creates the universe, is Brahma. Brahma comes out of Vishnu's navel, according to the tradition. And again, so much of it is symbolism. But Brahma creates the first man. And what's the first man's name? Well, man, Manu, man, you man. Yeah, isn't that curious, isn't it? The word for man is probably derived from the Sanskrit here. We might also take note of the name of Brahma's consort, Sarasvati, seems to resonate with that of Abraham's wife, Sarah, or Sarai, and each one's identity as a wife and or sister at the same time. So there's that symbolism too. Also in India, the Sarasvati River includes a tributary known as Gagar. According to Jewish tradition, Hagar was Sarah's maidservant. Both Brahmins and Hebrews see themselves as the chosen people of God. The Hebrews began their sojourn through history as a kingdom of priests. Likewise, Brahmins are also a community of priests. Donald M. Craig points to ancient sources regarding a history of Abraham from India. Flavius Josephus in Antiquities of the Jews quotes Aristotle as saying the Hebrews are derived from the Indian philosophers, and they are known as the Kalani. Clericus of Soli was a student of Aristotle's school. In his book De Somno, he elaborates on the story of how Aristotle discovered this information, but the basic concept remained the same. Megasthenes was an ambassador of Seleucus I of Syria to India, and before the latter's death in 288 BC, he wrote that the Hebrews were an Indian tribe or sect called the Kalani. Except for the spelling, he agreed with Aristotle and Clericus. Higgins also claims Ur of the Chaldees, the home of Abraham mentioned in the Bible, was actually Ur of the Chaldeans. Chaldean, he continues, is actually Kal Deva, or Holy Kals, a Brahmanical caste of India. He writes that the tribe of Brahmin, Abraham, was expelled from the left India and settled in Goshen in Egypt. He finally states the Arabian historians contend that Brahma and Abraham, their ancestor, are the same person. The Hebrew Bible adds another possibility regarding the relationship between India and Israel. To the sons of the concubines, Abraham gave gifts when he was still alive, and he sent them away from his son Isaac eastward to the land of the east. Perhaps to highlight the relationship and comparison, the son of the King David, the Hebrew Bible later reads, Solomon's wisdom surpassed the wisdom of the children of the East. Abraham, Sarah, and Brahma, Sarasvati are not the only overlapping figures between Hindu-Hebrew traditions. Ajit Vada Kayil points out that there is also an Adam Eve and a Adhama Hayavati. Along with Noah, there is Nayuha, or Manu. As well, the Hebrew religion is one among a group of traditions, including Islam and Christianity, that believe that Abraham is their father. As well, since Brahma has will-born sons, Brahmanaspati, lord of the Brahmin priests, and Brihaspati, lord of the burden carriers, their relationship with Abraham cannot be answered so simply as introductory title is asking. And it goes on and on. I mean, there is so much to see. Again, when we look just at the biblical way of things, you're getting cliff notes. That's all you're getting is just cliff notes. It's missing the meat. And Manu, again, is the first man. Man/you. You, man. I mean, how simple is that? And this is the tradition. We've touched on this. Is the word Israel an anagram for Israel, or is it even an anagram for Isis, Ra, and El? And again, El is the Canaanite chief deity where they had settled. And at the same time, when we look to El, Elohim, and when we look to the energy, what Cindy sees is a kind of a being in a cloud, just very, very representative of God up in a cloud. That seems to almost be similar to kind of like a program that creates.
It's kind of complicated, but it is. It's exactly that. It's a cloud, and it has a lot of information in it. And you have the ability to invoke this information in that cloud. Things are not as they put it in books. I think a lot of the writings that we see are because they're feeling that humans need to relate to other humans, and they can't necessarily see consciousness as something like a cloud. How could a cloud actually be? Well, if you use certain energies with a certain intent, yes, then it is being, then actually, whatever karmically is done, if you're the one who initiated that, well, then you receive that karma, good, bad, or indifferent.
Absolutely. And again, Isis is the mother goddess, so in so many ways she's representative of all of the created realm, all of the material universe. Ra is the sun. The sun is a relay for source, and ultimately it's what does it give us? It gives us light. What's light? Light's knowledge, gnosis. And also it's through the light and the light codes that we are going up, up, up. And this is why they want to spread chemtrails in the sky, because they don't want us getting the message from source and from the original creator. There's so many different ways of looking at this. The balanced sides of spirit and mind. Again, now we're starting to get more into that Shiva and Shakti energy. And then when we say Amen, we're really saying Amun. And who is Amun? Well, Amun is the hidden god of the Egyptians. Israel, Amen. Israel, Amun. Baby Moses left in a basket in the Nile. This story too has been echoed in multiple traditions. And in fact, we even find here you see little baby Krishna being carried in a basket through the water, guarded by serpents. Oh my God, serpents. But we're told Adam and Eve. Well, again, it's the Kundalini. It's the life force. It's the creative energy that's in every single being. Gopi Krishna's book, again, if you could probably find a used copy of Gopi Krishna's book, Kundalini, the Evolutionary Energy in Man. That's where the original name of the original channel came from. And it's all about initiating that in humans. Now, his story is a great one to read because it comes with many, many warnings about initiating it too soon, because he experienced a lot of trauma in his life. But again, this is why we do mantras. This is why we draw in the positive energies. We root and ground to the earth as she is changing, and she is ascending, and she is ascending one way or another, with or without us. So by rooting and grounding, you're going to help your own ascension process.
And that's really what we should be worried about. You know, when I hear the word Kundalini, I don't think that should in any way be anyone's main goal. If you're doing the right things, the right thing will happen. It's so important to heal yourself, because if this energy goes off before the healing occurs, there can be many problems. So our focus really should be rooting, grounding, meditation, mantras. And when all of that is done, whatever is supposed to happen can happen, and it happens safely.
Yeah. And, one last thing that I might as well tie in here is when we talk about the siddhis, which are the yogic superpowers that are attributed to people that have, achieved a certain level spiritually. And then you look at, like, you could say biblically, gifts of the Holy Spirit, right? And to me, it's still kind of, I mean, I understand, but it does still boggle my mind that people can't see that we're talking about the same things here. Gifts of the Holy Spirit, wisdom and etc. And, there's also being able to read signs, things like that. Prophecy is one of the main ones. And when we look again to the siddhis, that's one of them, is understanding discernment, true discernment, the ability to start to operate outside of time and space. And definitely things like telepathy, not just between us. I mean, look to St. Francis of Assisi. The animals loved him. They came up to him and they felt at peace. They knew they had nothing to fear from this man. He is not going to harm us. That reminds me of my own dad, who everybody's pets would always want to go and climb on his lap because he just exuded so much peace. So we're really talking about the same things. The controllers just try to turn it into a dogmatic fight between humanity because, again, that's how they do things. We look to the Tower of Babel. You guys know.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
So, as always, guys, thanks for your support on Patreon. Luann, thank you. Our newest Patreon, Luann. Also on Ko-Fi, where you could do a one-time donation or monthly support. Just change the number of coffees. We do also hope you guys will check out Medicinal Foods. Link on every page. Use coupon code EEA and you get 10% off. It does also support the channel. Indigo and Ether. This is our sister Alicia. She didn't give any code, but just wanted to let you guys know that if you ordered $35, it's free shipping, and she's out of Omaha, Nebraska, and makes a lot of really nice items as well and charges them with Reiki healing energy. So may you guys be blessed by the true creator of this universe. Namaste.
Namaste.